welcome to an Insane Man again. This is Mr. Rudy, Sports, Fun Talk in Life. This is going to be a life and fun talk segment. I have Nicky with me. Hello, Nicky.
Hello.
She is a psychology master about to be. And the talk is about the laugh is serious. And the talk is going to be basically whatever we feel. And we were having a very interesting conversation yesterday, which was about, well, she just mentioned locus of control, but we were essentially going over all the main, bulletins throughout advancement in psychology, from Bowlby's attachment theory, with Nicky, right, the metal caged monkey, and
Marlowe's studies with monkeys and cupboard love.
Yeah, and then I was having a little pinprickle of how to define what Pavlov dogs and what was the other one? The other guy?
Skinner's pigeons.
No, what was the other one? What was the third one then? You said conditioning, and then there was...
So there was we had operant conditioning, classical conditioning,
right.
Which is Pavlov and...
positive feedback and negative feedback, like reward for something good.
Oh, yeah. That comes under operant conditioning, yeah. And then we had Bowlby and Ainsworth with attachment theory.
Ainsworth. And then the classical is instinctual almost. If it's warm outside, or if it's cold outside, you typically want to go somewhere where it's warmer. That's not the best example. If someone slaps their hands really loud and it surprises you, you instinctually jump back or have a wide-eye thing. You don't control that thought, right?
Yeah, it's like a sense, something like a sensory response.
And I just had a thought. I'm wondering what people and you might think. Everyone has, I've said this a few times, everyone has interests. Everyone has, I guess, general, you want to have good food, or at least food in general. You want to have shelter. You want to, and then you go a little bit further, you want to have entertainment. You want to be a winner. You don't want to be a loser, which is avoiding the negative, getting the positive. And yesterday we were talking about the authority thing, the authority theories and tests of them, what was it, the Pennsylvania? It was you have to be prison guards, and everyone thinks they're going to be good prison guards, but then they all have power trips and start treating people badly.
Yeah, that's Zimbardo, Philip Zimbardo. It was the Stanford prison experiment.
And then a second ago, you were just about to elaborate on your thoughts on after World War II, they had the Nuremberg trials, the Dr. Ewan Cameron with the crazy SMK Ultra experiments on mentally ill people, even Whitey Bolton was in it.
Yeah.
That's what you were about to start talking about, if you will.
Yeah, I was reminding myself of the locus of control and how much we feel we have control over our own behaviors. And while all the studies on obedience, authority, conformity were going on, in the 60s, a lot of it was being used to look back at the atrocities the Nazis committed during the war and see if they could be explained in that way. And you had Zimbardo's very famous experiment, Milgram's experiment with obedience and giving electric shocks, and how the proximity of an authoritative figure really affects if you carry on with the behavior that you're doing. It's
like peer pressure.
Exactly, yeah. It's like peer pressure. And so a lot of people were trying to use it to not really justify, but authority figures were giving soldiers or other lower down generals rules to carry out these atrocities and mass.
Isn't that why Eichmann got acquitted or didn't get fully charged? Because he had been taking orders or something, right?
I actually am not sure on that. I don't know that.
Yeah, me neither. I'm probably absolutely wrong about that. But anyway.
But I do believe a lot of people in the Nuremberg trials were let off because the Americans did want them. The Americans wanted them.
Yeah, like I said, Dr. Ewan Cameron, you sent me these transcripts from the MK Ultra stuff. He was the head of the Memorial for research in Canada, and then he came over to Massachusetts, and he was like the first medical director at Worcester State Hospital, still around today, and like he was giving people like lethal doses of insulin just to like start a reprogramming thing to make the super soldier, people who will just do any order and are super efficient and everything. He was basically trying to like reprogram people's brains by killing their brains almost.
Yeah, so he was being funded by the Americans as part of MK Ultra to see if, as a humans could sort of be reprogrammed, and he would use massive electric shocks, like ECT therapy, but over what is advised, massive sleep deprivation, things like that, to see if it was possible to sort of wipe a human and then recreate them as someone you want, however you want.
Back up.
Yeah. As all part of
people have gone through all of those types of avenues, conspiracy theories and fucked up governmental things, but this is an ongoing thing, I suppose. Like, I don't know exactly what the new like developments beyond. Like, Volbe's one of the newer ones. It was like the 80s, right? And then there's people now who are adding. I don't know, the DSM got revised, and it's like, remember that thing, it's the narcissistic, is like the new ADHD, because ADHD was like the big diagnosis and Adderall and all that stuff in like the early 2000s, 25 years later, 2026.
Yeah, very much now it's like, autism.
There's way into personality stuff and, you know, racial equality and like, especially in America, and like all this confluxion of mix instead of just one definitive thing. But it's about to cut, because we got 50 minutes on this. So this was a very brief preview. We're about to go to, we're going to continue this. Let me call you back.
Yeah.
All right. This is an ongoing episode. I'll be back. Okay. So I didn't know she could pause as we were recording, so we're just going to continue as if I say we'll be back. If you had thoughts about something.
Yeah, it was about what you said about attachment theory being relatively new, which it is. Bowlby's theory of attachment was from 1969, and then the strange situation experiments studies with him and Ainsworth were in the late 70s. But I would say possibly why it's so relatively new is because over history our child rearing practices have changed. We're very much as like a singular family unit now of we bring up our own children, whereas if you look into history, a lot of it was like if you have a child or a baby, okay, it's the wet nurse is going to look after the child. I'm not really going to have much to do with it.
Women clean, cook the house, you know what I mean? The house, all that stuff. I don't work. The men work.
Yeah, I think.
And now women are like UFC fighters and everything.
Yeah, not being as involved in the child's life, whereas it changed and we very much are now.
Oh yeah, and men are a lot more openly gay and very gentle too. On the other side of it.
Yes, but I feel like that's changed as well throughout history.
Well, I mean, I don't remember it having a time like it is now. It could have been.
No, it hasn't. But I know very much like the Victorian era is what really.
America too.
The Victorian era is really what brought in, I think, a lot of that absolutely no of like homosexuality.
Well, psychology. Like gay used to be a mental illness.
Yeah.
Well,
until very recently. Yeah, until surprisingly recently when it was taken out of the DSM as a mental illness.
You know, I sometimes forget that slavery was still around in like the early, late 80s. Like it seems like it was like done in the 40s. You know what I mean? But that's a whole different thing. But you want to continue?
Well, I just wanted to say that about attachment theory, but then also you do have the limitations with it, with all the cultural variations, but because it's very much focused on our Western idea of child rearing.
I feel like that's with almost any theory, because a theory is like now, and then like now could be before or after, and with new information adding to the theory, you have to revise it because
yes,
there's just so much information you can do. Like even right now, like you hear me, like I have a Boston accent, I curse a lot, but I'm relatively intelligent. I've been told I'm a genius, not to be arrogant, but I don't, only in a couple of regards. Like, I'm good at sports, and I can do things with words, and I have a decent memory. But I would say there's a lot more people way more genius and smart than me at many different things. That's not a bad or a good thing. It's just what it is, and it's,
yeah,
I guess, kind of
finding your
what we're talking
niche.
about. Well, this whole conversation is like human evolution and people, trying to create an understanding of everything. That's like the whole thing. That's the meaning of everything, right? Because we're talking about the difference between us and the quote-unquote lower species. And that's what we're talking about, both test theory and MK Ultra and crazy people and experiments and why people do things like could be seen as torturous or unethical. But my thing is, whatever is done, there has to be something, everything has a reason is the famous whole doji, right? So it's like true. Because if what the things quote unquote happen, that means that they happen. It's like people say things are wrong because they hurt people or hurt their feelings or kill someone or destroy something. But they wouldn't be able to happen, I think, if it wasn't meant to happen. You know what I mean?
So, kind of saying there is sort of a determinism with everything?
So I think of it like this, right? A lot of medical advancements for, like, Civil War soldiers, like, really killing soldiers, wrongly amputating them and not sealing off the artery, cauterizing the artery, and they bleed out. But through that almost brutal, almost like savage experimentation on a live human being, what other choice would you have if you're trying to save his life? There's going to be losses, you know?
Yes.
But it's still, you're losing a life to maybe better the future. That's why people cross that line, I suppose, a lot of times in the mind. Because they ultimately believe they're doing something a lot of times better for themselves, which is selfish, and a lot of people think selfish. But if you think of Ayn Rand, if that's how you say her name, the virtue of selfishness, we all do things selfishly, even worship God. Because when you think about it, if you're like, I put God above me, well, that's because that makes you feel good. That makes you feel like you're going to make it to heaven. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What you were saying with doing something for sort of the betterment of other people, I mean, you can very much look at the patriotism in the military with that. That is kind of a massive thing with them and what they live off. Hey, you might die, but you're saving your fellow countrymen in the process.
And when you look at it, it's like you're taking the ultimate risk. You could die. Yeah. But there are things that are like beyond just getting food and feeling safe, at least for humans. Which brings us back to the thing. So do you think animals would do that? Like, I mean, a bear will, let me think. So there's plenty of animals who, like the mongoose fighting the cobra. Like a cobra is a venomous snake, but the mongoose has I think it's adapted where it doesn't. Maybe this is another example because it's adapted not to die from its poison. Like it can get bit and survive, whereas everything else will die. But there are things that will fight things that clearly could kill them, that are much bigger, more dangerous, but they're doing it to protect the child. Or I guess it comes down to I think of it like this: genes are a conscious being, cells are one conscious being, and one body of trillions of cells is just a giant. It'd be like, I don't know, the equivalent of the episode Blackish, but all the people are times a trillion, and they're all trying to save that one neighborhood or that one dorky dude from getting yelled at by the fat black guy all the time. I think that's not the best example, but I'm not really sure it's the same show I'm talking about either. But do you know what I mean? The gene is the conscious. It has made it so, back to the beginning of our conversation, operant conditioning, classical conditioning, it's not even a thought process. You'll fight a badger will try to kill a bear if the bear's trying to kill the kid, because we all need to keep going. And if you kill me and my kid, eventually my species is going to die out, and that just doesn't make sense. The genes won't let that happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but going back to what we were saying yesterday about natural selection. And we're taking risks.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And then there's also like a deeper thing than that variation. Like, people don't take risks. Then there's people who will go rock climbing, like this guy who just did the Taipei thing without a safety net and anything. It's just because it wows him, it phases him, it's amazing. Which is, I guess, how we're different than animals, because I don't think an animal... There are animals that do things for, like, entertainment, right? Like, don't monkeys masturbate? Like, it doesn't really make sense to masturbate because you're wasting energy and it's only pleasurable, right?
Well, dolphins
when you think of it, you're kind of really killing yourself in a very incremental way because you're wasting life sustenance just for pleasure and not to recreate, you know?
Dolphins are one of the few species that have sex for pleasure. A lot of
but
other...
you see the point, right? Like, we're trying to figure out how we're different than the other, but they also do entertaining things that don't really make sense for survival.
Yeah.
So this is a question that comes along with that. Is entertainment a part of survival?
But then isn't it because we're better, we have so much more and everything sort of given to us in terms of what we need for survival, that our risk-taking behavior that, say, animals will need to do in order for survival, we're then putting that into other avenues.
For some reason, my brain didn't compute what you said. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. You were saying about the guy that free climbed the tower as, like, risk-taking. And I think is one of those things evolutionary as animals. Yes, at some points you are going to have to take risks in order for survival based on what situation you find yourself in. And
life is full of surprises.
Yeah, and as humans, because sort of everything we need for survival is sort of handed to us, it's easy with shelter and food, are we then taking that potential risk that we might need to take for survival? Because we don't need to do that, we're putting it into different avenues, such as free climbing a tower.
Oh, right, yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I just had a flashbulb, like, because, like, survival, a huge part of it in every species, but less so now. So, yeah, I get it now, what you were saying, because we're so basically handed everything now because we have just a technology and affordable thumbs and walk on upright. We can see it. Yeah, we have all these advantages that we basically lost the requirement to take the risks that most animals take every day. Sometimes even an animal to cross a river, that's a huge risk.
Yeah, the risk-taking purely for survival, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the reason why, even if we don't understand it in the moment as this, is because it only makes sense for people to take risks that don't make sense in the moment, because when we were in our early stages, where there was like the NFL also a like what's her name, Lucy, that was required and now it's not, but it's still in our genes, so some of us still do that even if we don't realize it because we're supposed to. That's what I was thinking. Like, I think a lot of unconscious things that people think are crazy or dangerous, like, we were supposed to do this stuff all the time and it's still inside of us, or like some of our cells in our brain. Even in our shin bone, there's probably an earthling, you know?
Well, you can look at our tailbones. We still have them. We don't have tails, but we still got them.
I think of Dragon Ball Z all the time. That's where that came from, how like Goku and them have tails when they're kids and they lose them or whatever. You probably see them anyway. What do you think? This is a decent cutoff point, and then we'll have another episode on this part too.
Yeah. Can do.
Right. I think this was a decent conversation. I wonder what people may think. If you have thoughts, comments, you want to call me a jackass, you want to say Nicky's the most beautiful woman on the world, go ahead. Although I might get angry and jealous. Probably not. Yeah. And then same thing, sports, fun talking life. Part 2 coming up.
Bye.